there are a growing number of economists that are voicing similar concerns about this potentially nudging the U.S. Into a recession, or at least putting upward pressure on inflation and other metrics that could eventually lead to one.
President Trump's insisting there'll be no pause in tariffs as he demanded that China back down in a trade war. Or, he said, by tomorrow, face a further charge of 50%. It's an extremely defiant message on a day of turbulence in the global stock markets. The tariffs on goods exported to the US from countries around the world prompted yesterday, as we were reporting on, significant falls in the Asian, British and European markets. But Donald Trump repeated his claim late last night that the US has been ripped off by other countries for years and rejected the idea of pausing the tariffs.
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country, because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan. And they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking.
Let's find out more. Ari Hawkins, trade policy reporter for Politico and also author of the daily trade policy newsletter Morning Trade, is here. Ari, good evening to you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. This is an extraordinary busy time. Day 4 of trading starts. Just tell us what we're seeing already in the stock markets today.
Oh, it's a chaotic space. The Trump administration and certain senior officials, you saw take certain action to try to get the point across that there would be some kind of potential short-term pain, sort of to put in that little bit of a cushion. But it's markets are reacting strong and fast, and there's no indication that that's going to let up, at least for the next little while.
I mean, just talk us through the last 24 hours or so. Some analysts yesterday, particularly in terms of what happened in Asia, were describing it as a bloodbath.
Yeah, no, the total decline really does sort of come back to what has been sort of a central feature here. It's beginning to weigh on Asian markets in particular too. That's why, in part, we're seeing such high flares from countries like China. In the U.S., there are a growing number of economists that are voicing similar concerns about this potentially nudging the U.S. Into a recession, or at least putting upward pressure on inflation and other metrics that could eventually lead to one. And we're seeing that reflected both in the markets and from just about every indicator that this is not a normal situation.
Last week, Beijing imposed this 34% tariff on American goods in retaliation for Trump putting an equivalent level of trade levies on imports from China. Talk to us about Donald Trump's threat then to effectively strong-arm Beijing into retreating by saying, look, if you don't step down, we'll put another 50% charge on. I mean, do you believe him when he issues that threat?
I think it's definitely a fair question to ask. I would say at this point, this is part of a strategy where we've seen before, where the Trump administration will focus a lot of very fiery language with relation to his tariff policies. And that has been, at least historically, done in part to sometimes get another country to lower. We saw that with the example of Canada, where both sides ended up dropping their threats to mutually retaliate once that rhetoric got very heated. What I think something to sort of underscore here is that the U.S. and China haven't been as public in any form of engagement. It's an indication that there might be some level of struggle to try to really negotiate with China, considering its place as a very dominant economy and one that the U.S. relies on quite a bit. What this could indicate is that the Trump administration might still feel the need to take that extra step, be more fiery, because they might not be getting that type of attention that they believe that these tariffs warrant.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social and said there will be no meetings with China. However, he said negotiations with other countries, which have also requested meetings, will begin taking place immediately. I mean, what are Donald Trump's priorities? Everybody, it seems, wants to have a conversation with him to try and negotiate some kind of exemption or a better or more favourable rate. Who does Donald Trump want to speak to?
I think Donald Trump truly does perceive tariffs as this positive revenue raiser and something that could boost the U.S. economy. I think that he's also touting the level of interest. His advisors have floated 50 to 70 countries that have supposedly reached out to try to craft those types of negotiations. Trump wants the ability to sort of be able to maneuver the global landscape with this America First mindset and sort of engaging in trade, particularly on his terms. So I think it's less about any one person that Trump wants to speak to on this. And he definitely does believe that this will fuel some kind of grand overhaul of how the U.S. operates. And it does seem like that's his primary goal. But at the same time, weighing whether that reality will hit some of the market dynamics that we've seen and some of the economic and political fallout that could very well follow, that does have the potential of clashing as particularly some Republican lawmakers start to voice a little bit more of their grievances on this.
Yeah, and potentially as that concern raises of a US recession. Ari, thank you so much. Ari Hawkins, the trade policy reporter for Politico.
The word tariff is my favorite word in the dictionary. You know, we were the richest relatively from, think of this, from 1870 to 1913. That was our richest because we collected tariffs from foreign countries that came in and took our jobs and took our money, took our everything. But they charged tariffs, and we had so much money they set up the 1887. Think of that, a long time ago, 1887 Tariff Commission. It was a commission of very important people to determine where we should spend all of the tremendous, vast wealth that we had. We had so much wealth. Wouldn't it be nice today? Of course, now we give it away to transgender this, transgender that. Everybody gets a transgender operation. It's just wonderful. We give it away like to crazy things. But in those days, it was different. It was a different world. It was a different country. But we were very rich because of tariffs. And I get myself in trouble because I say that tariff is my favorite word, and the fake news went crazy. What about God? What about wife and family? What about love? I said, okay, tariff is now my fourth favorite word.